San Francisco 49ers cornerback Charvarius Ward with some interesting comments. Depends on your perspective, how you might take those comments. Is he filling up the New York Jets bulletin board well before week one of the 2024 NFL season? Some good old guys, some good young guys on the San Francisco 49ers rosters as well, showing up on PFF best of lists. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Of course, we love all our everydayers out there. We love it when you are subscribed. Please hit subscribe. Helps us tremendously on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Terms apply. All right, Croc, some interesting comments from cornerback Charvarius Ward. You, a cornerback yourself, can probably help translate some of these things and how it might be taken by a certain wide receiver that Charvarius Ward's going to be covering in week one. And if these comments are innocuous, if they are some bulletin board material. And so some nice little juice already for this week one matchup with the New York Jets and the San Francisco 49ers. I want to talk a little bit more about PFF's top 30 players over 30 and top 25 players under 25 years old next, Croc. But let's talk Charvarius Ward, Niners cornerback, on with Kay Adams, Up and Adams show. Said a couple of interesting things. One, which I love, that he wants to pick off Aaron Rodgers, return it for a touchdown, and then have Rodgers sign the football after the game. I love that, and I hope that happens for Charvarius Ward and the San Francisco 49ers. He said something else that, and look, that might be enough to give Aaron Rodgers a little bit of juice when he hears about this. And you know these guys will hear about these things. He said something else about Garrett Wilson, and it was just a quick little thing he said. And you can go see the whole interview on Up and Adams, Kay Adams, Twitter, and find some retweets of that video. Find it retweeted on my timeline as well. He was talking about who he's covering, and that player being Garrett Wilson, the number one, the big dog, I think, as he called it, with the New York Jets at wide receiver, Croc. And he's like, what's his name? Oh, Garrett Wilson. Right. That's his name. And he just dropped that little, he's like, couldn't quite remember his name. Croc, the best receivers in the league, the guys that you have to cover, you're going to remember their name, right? So are some of these comments that Charvarius Ward has made about the New York Jets, as to me, as innocuous as they seem, are these some things that I think are going to be logged and remembered and in the back of the mind, maybe in the front of the mind of New York Jets offensive players, defensive players, some of the best players in the league on their team, and Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson? And oh yeah, Charvarius Ward already had a little back and forth post Super Bowl with cornerback Sauce Gardner of the New York Jets as well, who had some opinions on the Super Bowl. Charvarius Ward basically said, shut up, you don't know what a Super Bowl is even all about, and your franchise doesn't go to Super Bowls. And so I think there's going to be more there than I think people realize with some of these comments once the season does kick off with the 49ers and the Jets in Santa Clara.
It kind of reminds me of getting ready for a big boxing match, right? And you do certain things to kind of hype it up, or people spend certain things to hype it up. But, fighters, they have to sell the fight. I don't think football players have to sell the game. I think September 9th or 10th or whatever, like, people will be tuned in. It's Monday Night Football. It's primetime television. It's 49ers. It's Jets. They have a large fan base. So people are going to be tuned in regardless. A couple of things here. Well, let's start with the Aaron Rodgers stuff. A lot of the guys that I've been around or either played with or, just football players, they love being able to say they did something to an all-time great, a Hall of Famer. So Charvarius Ward saying, man, I want to pick off Aaron Rodgers. I think that's a bold of respect and a testament to how these guys view Aaron Rodgers. Like he said, man, I want to pick it off and have him sign it after. You know, like that, like, man, this is a ball. I picked off Aaron Rodgers. And I have a buddy who picked off Peyton Manning. I have a buddy who picked off Tom Brady. I have a buddy who got his first career sack against Tom Brady. Like, those guys cherish and remember that moment forever. It's not about anybody else or anything. It's like, man, what I was able to accomplish against an all-time great Hall of Famer. I could tell my grandkids, hey, man, back in 2014, I picked off Tom Brady. Or hey, back in 2024, I picked off Aaron Rodgers, that guy you're watching on TV. They're talking about him being in the Hall of Fame. So I don't think Aaron Rodgers has any disrespect. I think Aaron Rodgers, I think we know he can be a little different, a little quirky. He might just kind of be smug about it, laugh it off, but he'll probably make note of it mentally in his head, even if he doesn't say anything about it. Now, the other thing, as soon as I watched it, I said, people are going to blow this way out of to what it truly is. You even worded it wrong. What he said was, I'm probably going to have to follow around their guy, Garrett Wilson. And then he said, wait, that's his name, right? Garrett Wilson. So just, making sure. Have Garrett Wilson's been in the league for 2 years now. There is a chance. I don't think they played each other. Have the 49ers played the Jets the last 2 years? No. They ain't played them last.
No.
The year before. So there's a chance he, one, has not played them. And then a lot of times I think people, when it comes to watching film, a lot of these guys, it's not like they go back and watch every single game. A lot of times they watch like the last few. And some of the things are already broken down for them. Hey, let's watch these third downs. Let's watch this. And the way that these conversations happen in meeting rooms, and I've been in these rooms, they call guys by their numbers. They don't even say their names. So Garrett Wilson, I bet if you asked him, hey, what number is Garrett Wilson, which he has changed it to number 5, his college number. But prior to changing it, if you say, hey, what number is Garrett Wilson? He'd be like, oh, the number 1 receiver from the Jets, number 17. He will know his number. But there's a chance when they're talking about him, because a lot of time when they're watching the film, it's, hey, if 17 is in the slot and he does this is what we're expecting. If you see 17 out here and he's outside the numbers and then the motion's in, this is what we're expecting. If it's 3rd and 10, 17, they like to do this. They don't really refer to guys a lot by their names. Unless it's like, hey, Brady likes to do this. They'll mention Brady's name, but for the most part, they don't really mention guys' names like that. So he clearly knew his name, but just, let me make sure I'm talking about the right guy, because there's how many receivers in the NFL? If every team has 2 starting receivers or 3 starting receivers, and you have 32 teams, you're talking about almost 100 receivers. You think they're going to just off the top of their head, and they've never played against a guy 100%? They don't sit around and watch a lot of football. So I heard that. I think we even sometimes mess up. I'd be like, hey, man, that kid from, and I'll say, thinking I forget his name, and it's like, oh, I know his name, but I just kind of forgot it in the moment. People are going to make a big deal out of it. And I read the comments, and he'll know his name after week 1. Who is this guy? Nobody even knows who Charvarius Ward is. He's an NFL player, man. And a lot of them don't pay that much attention to everything else going around, unless it's like a superstar or you played this guy multiple times. It was very disrespectful of Aaron Donald to not know Debo's name, because you guys been playing against each other twice a year for the last 3-4 years or whatever it was, and you still don't know this guy's name who's put up and been very productive against you guys. You know who Debo is. But with Garrett Wilson, they ain't really play each other. I didn't think anything of it, to be honest.
I didn't realize that Garrett Wilson was changed his number back to number 5, and it starts to make sense now, because I saw earlier this week, all the rookies are being unveiled in their new jersey numbers. And I saw a guy wearing number 17 New York Jets. And I was like, dude, that's not Garrett Wilson. What is going on right now? And his rookie 3rd rounder, Malachi Corley, is now going to be wearing number 17. And it's like, what is that? Did they just hire an actor to wear Garrett Wilson's jersey to unveil the jerseys? Because I think they have some new jerseys going on with the Jets. I was so confused. But then I was like, oh, that's Malachi Corley. Why is he wearing 17? Okay, so Garrett Wilson's going to be wearing number 5 for the Jets. Okay, that makes sense. I have a slightly different take than you, Croc, and I get where you're coming from, and I agree with you. But I'm going to tell you why it's not going to be taken that way by anybody on the New York Jets. We'll get to that next. I want to talk about PFF's over 30 years old players. Niners have a couple of guys on that list, and the 25 under 25. One guy on that list as well for the Niners. We'll get to it next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app right now. Get a little special offer for our Locked On listeners. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes all the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets. The schedule is out. I'm sure you're circling some dates of which games you want to go see. You can find all of those tickets at Game Time, and maybe you wait too long and you're sitting there in the fall and you're like, man, I'm going to go to the game tomorrow. I'm going to go to the game right now. It's about to kick off. You can find last-minute tickets for NFL games, for baseball games, for basketball games, concerts, comedy shows, theater events, whatever it is near you, you can find those tickets at Game Time. A couple of taps, and they're right there on the Game Time app. When you arrive at your event, you can find them right on the app. You don't have to go fishing through your email. And my favorite part, the all-in pricing. You toggle on the all-in pricing feature. It shows the total up front, so you don't get those hidden surprise fees at checkout. Zone deals, flash deals, so much more at Game Time. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So what Charvarius Ward said was nothing, right? It was he praised both players while he was saying it. He was like, oh, man, Aaron Rodgers is actually pretty cool. I would love to be able to intercept him and get him to sign it. He talked about Garrett Wilson being their big dog, right? You know, it's going to be good on good. Can't wait to go against someone who's their best receiver in Garrett Wilson. What's his name? Garrett Wilson? Oh, yeah, Garrett Wilson. But I find it hard to believe, Croc, and you've talked about this before, about how sometimes even professional football players don't pay that close of attention to the league. And like, we're fans of the NFL. You and I, Croc, cover the NFL. We have to know who all of these draft picks are. And I would get it if Charvarius Ward isn't quite sure the name of a guy who's like the third receiver, maybe a late round pick, maybe a rookie on the team he's going to be playing in a few months. But Garrett Wilson's a big time guy from a big time school, a top 10 pick. He's a high fantasy draft pick. You're not sure about Garrett Wilson's name? Like that's just kind of strange to me, Croc. Like I don't get that. And I know for sure because these guys are out of their minds and they're competitive. Whether it's Aaron Rodgers, whether it's Sauce Gardner, whether it's Garrett Wilson, these quotes are going to be out of context. And these guys want reasons to be mad about something before a game. It's going to be on the bulletin board, whether it really should be or not for the New York Jets.
What are they going to say? Hey, this guy said you were the best receiver and you're a big dog and he can't wait to compete. And he said your name, but then he said, wait, that's his name, right? Like, is that the bulletin board?
They're going to say, they don't even know your name, number 5. What are you going to do about it? This guy doesn't even know your name. They're going to know your name after today. It's going to be the same thing as when Aaron Rodgers said it about Deebo Samuel. It was definitely more disrespectful the way Aaron Donald said it. And you can bet that motivated the 49ers and Deebo Samuel. So now you got multiple guys, multiple positions on the Jets roster. So you're going to have Sauce Gardner, maybe giving a little extra as he tries to shut down Brandon Ayuk if he ever gets his butt into camp. And then you have the Hall of Fame quarterback and one of the better receivers in the league that are going to be gunning for you as well. So right or wrong, I think he might have a little target on his back. And these guys don't need much. And a lot of times they're looking for something to give them that little bit of an edge on Sunday or Monday night in this case.
Here, I'll compare it to something so it can put it into perspective to you and everybody in the chat. And by the way, in the chat right now, we are live and direct on this Tuesday morning, May 21st, the day after my birthday. Just turned 37 years old.
What? I didn't know it was your birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, Croc.
Yeah, yesterday. I'm not excited about that.
He's I believe Eric Crocker is on the PFF list of 30 best 30 podcasters over the age of 30. If I'm not mistaken.
Well, okay, let's take it there, right? Locked On 49ers, we do very well with where we're at, with in the podcast game, right? If a new podcast jumped off, right, and it's a 49ers podcast, there's a chance, and I'm not saying you and I are big time or anything like that, but we focus on Locked On 49ers. We focus on looking at the 49ers, and we're not really like looking for new podcasts that are coming in. Where like a fan, they'll know the new, hey man, there's this new 49ers podcast. These guys are good. You and I, we may not know because we're so focused on what we do. And I think that's a lot like the NFL. I think there's a chance that Charvarius Ward may not watch a whole lot of college football. And this is a guy, I mean, what college did he go to? I think it was like blue and white. I don't even remember the name of the college he went to. He has no ties to Ohio State and paying attention to those guys who are getting drafted. Again, some of them you may hear more than others. Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out, a lot of people, he was a polarizing name. Garrett Wilson, really good receiver, him and Chris Olave. But how much do these guys truly watch the draft? I don't know if they're tuned in like you and I. We're doing a live show. We're watching the draft. Charvarius Ward is probably out somewhere with his lady friend or something on a cruise, on vacation, enjoying in their offseason while the NFL draft is going on. So I don't think they, unless they're just this diehard sports fan, which most of these guys aren't. I was in the NFL. We would have these meetings and we would play these games where you had to guess, hey, what teams are in the NFC North? And out of all the first and second year players that were in there, maybe two guys knew who was in the NFC North. Like most of these guys didn't even know who was in the AFC East. And the division you play in. Like they're not as in tune with everything that's going on in the NFL as I think most people would like them to think they are. They that's their job. Their job is to play football. So they prepare, they get ready, they go out there, they play. There's not a whole lot of ties to the team they currently play on or anyone else around the NFL, especially for a guy who didn't go to a school where he's playing against the Ohio States and the Michigans. He probably doesn't know who those guys are. I was actually shocked because me going to into the NFL, I was a big fan. I never thought I would be there. I was a huge fan of football. So we're in the meeting rooms, and I'm like, oh, man, Julian Edelman, that was a good route by him. And then they're like, you mean number 11? Like, they don't call guys by their names.
I love the story that you were at Jets camp and you had a 49ers case on your phone still.
Yeah, man. 49. Come on, man. Like I heard Steve Smith talk about this because he's a 49er fan. And he talked about his grandma giving him a 49ers blanket, and he still has that blanket. And he said, and they asked about, the Panthers and the Ravens. And he's like, they were my employers. Like, they were my favorite team. Like, I grew up a 49er fan. And that goes on a lot. That's why people get so butthurt. The Tom Brady's and the Aaron Rodgers over not getting picked up or drafted by the 49ers. Because, like, that was actually my team, not this team that drafted me. They're just my employer. You think Aaron Rodgers gives two damns about Green Bay after he left? The only thing he's going to care about is, are they going to retire my name and put it up in the bleachers? But outside of that, he probably don't care about Green Bay. I doubt he may visit Green Bay one time in his retirement, and it will probably just be when they do like a Ring of Honor ceremony or retire his jersey. Like, that's it.
One thing's for sure that I feel for Ward and anybody that's doing broadcasting and live stuff and the stuff you have to remember, the stuff you have to recall. It's hard. And a couple weeks ago, I was talking, you brought up the podcasting thing. And a few weeks ago, I couldn't remember Ross Tucker's name. He was a podcasting OG. I know Ross Tucker. I could picture his face. For some reason, in the moment, I couldn't recall his name. That'd be disrespectful. That would go on Ross Tucker's bulletin board. If he was listening to this podcast, he's like, what? You didn't remember my name? This dude's got like 9 podcasts. He's been doing it for a long time. He was doing it back in the day at ESPN with my guy, Matt Williamson. By the way, Peacock and Williamson show. Check that out daily right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard. And he knows who Garrett Wilson is, and he knew his name, but he wasn't quite sure. But, man, these guys, wide receivers and DBs especially wide receivers, Croc, they're wired different, man. And they don't need that much. Steve Smith, he didn't need that much, right, to be motivated. And so I think some of the things that Ward has said, and maybe even more than anything, his barbs on social media post Super Bowl with Sauce Gardner will be for sure brought about and continually asked of those players before the game, before the lead up too. And they may not even listen to the whole interview. They'll be like, oh, this will be the thing. So if Garrett Wilson doesn't listen to the interview, a reporter will say, Charvarius Ward didn't know your name, Garrett Wilson. What do you think about that? Right. And so that's the way it'll be framed leading up to the game. And it's not nothing. I think it should be probably nothing, but I don't think it's going to be nothing when it comes to the New York Jets.
Garrett Wilson might say, who's Charvarius Ward?
That's probably what'll end up happening. Hopefully he doesn't after the game say, like Deebo Samuel did when he's running all over the Los Angeles Rams, right?
I love that. I love Deebo Samuel. It seems like a lot of 49er fans have kind of soured on him for whatever reason. I don't know where they're trying to push Deebo Samuel out the door, and Deebo's another one of those guys who was like, I didn't grow up watching football. I didn't have a favorite team. Like Deebo probably doesn't know the name of a lot of the guys he plays against. He probably just cares about what he does on the field, and he goes home and takes care of his family. But the way he approaches the game, I just love the way he plays. Just with bully mentality, how he gets turned up, how he gets excited. I love watching him come out the tunnel with Trent Williams. He's definitely probably my favorite 49er player to just watch. Now, again, I wish he did some things a little different. His approach to the offseason with just not just doing drills, but really working on becoming a better route runner, a better separator. I think he can add that to his game. Might just have to drop a few more pounds than he would like. And I think he's embraced the wide back thing just a tad bit too much. But even then, when he steps on the field, I expect like this certain level of production and how he approaches it. And I do think, when he eventually is not a Niner anymore, you'll miss what he brought to the 49ers offense. So
he can create so much on his own, and it's not something you can replace in other teams looking for the next Debo. There's only one Debo, right? And so appreciate it while you got him, 49ers fans, for sure. Next, I want to talk about Pro Football Focus's list of 30 players over 30 and 25 under 25. Niners showing up on both lists next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL. And of course, FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big W of your own betting on those games. And of course, right now, a special offer. New customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, playoff hoops, Major League Baseball. And yeah, you can still bet on the NFL, even though it's the off season. Tons of NFL futures. We got 60-1 odds for Ricky Pearsall to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. You got Defensive Rookies of the Year. You've got 49ers favorites to win the next Super Bowl. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. By the way, speaking of the Peacock and Williamson NFL show, just recorded an episode. It's up now after this. Go check it out. Peacock and Williamson talked with John Costco. He was the author for PFF's list of 30 players over 30 years of age. And there's a couple of 49ers on this list, a couple of 49ers in the top 30 players over 30, including the #1 player, Croc, which is still Trent Williams. And the level that Trent Williams is playing at, still the best left tackle in the game, 36 years old. He was the #1 player on PFF's list of 30 players over the age of 30. But #4 on the list was George Kittle, Croc. And I think even more fascinating than that, a player who he was above is fellow 30-plus-year-old tight end, Travis Kelce. So George Kittle listed above Travis Kelce on the list. And as John put it, because we talked about it at the end of that episode, and he was like, he's a better blocker and still a great receiver. So he's a better football player right now in his 30s than Travis Kelce, even though Travis Kelce might give you a little bit more as a receiver. And Travis Kelce's blocking grades at PFF have actually gone down from where they were, and George Hill was already better there. So I thought that was fascinating there, Croc. And the other thing is, more guys on the 30 over 30 list than the 25 under 25 list, which underscores another aspect of this transitional season for the 49ers, because they're an older team right now. And even their draft picks, Croc, those guys will not be eligible for the 25 under 25 list next year because they're all going to be over 25 already in year 2 if they have a breakout rookie season.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's start with some of these older guys. And it is cool to see Trent Williams on the list, George Kittle on the list. I think that's the elephant in the room, right? A lot of people feel like that Super Bowl window is closing. And I have to kind of disagree. I think the 49ers, I think Kyle Shanahan, I think John Lynch, when you look at how they've been able to retool this team, you look at the 2019 Super Bowl, right? You'd assume, the Super Bowl window is going to close in a couple of years. No, it's kind of stayed open, right? They've done a good job of just replacing guys and figuring out what works. Okay, you had Joe Staley. He was another guy. You lose him. You lose DeForest Buckner. Hey, let's replace Joe Staley with, I don't know, Trent Williams, one of the greatest offensive tackles ever. I'm not saying they'll be able to do that again, but I do trust, until we're just proven wrong, I trust their ability to just retool, reload, keep it rolling. All right, so the team, it is a little older in comparison to like the Green Bay Packers, who they played in the playoffs, who are like they had like the youngest offense in the NFL. Does it worry you to have to be so like loaded or front loaded with aging veterans? Or do you kind of view it from my standpoint of it's not an issue until it becomes an issue?
I think the number one way that you stay good for a long time is have a great coach, a great system in place, and a quarterback. And the reason they will stay good and relevant, Croc, is because the one guy that's on the 25 under 25 list is their quarterback, and Brock Purdy. And as long as Brock Purdy is good enough to start carrying some of the load on the team and not just be the guy who's facilitating going forward, that's the biggest key. And that'll be the most interesting thing for the 49ers, because if you have a marriage of a great quarterback and a great coach, you're going to be good for a long time, and you can replenish talent around you. Now, you can't expect that they're going to be able to keep drafting. And last year, no team had fewer snaps played by their rookie class than the 49ers. And then you start going back to the 2021 draft and the Trey Lance draft, right? And then you start looking at some of the classes recently, and they're getting fewer and fewer, the 2022 class. If it wasn't for Brock Purdy, they're getting, you can't expect that they're going to keep getting the George Kittles and the 5th round superstar players. Now, they've been really good at doing that, but it's been historical. So you would think that would kind of regress to the mean a little bit. And then they still have to replace some really high-end players. Are they going to be able, is there going to be another trade available for the next Trent Williams? I don't know. That might have been a one-off thing. So they're going to have to find some ways to replace important positions, important players, premier positions. And so that's going to be it's going to be a difficult ask. And as the rest of the roster does start to age out and you start to lose some star players, and next year, Christian McCaffrey is going to be on the over 30 list, right? And so in running, there's only one running back on the list. It's Derrick Henry, and he's like at the precipice, like his toes are hanging off that ledge, and he's not very old. It's up to coach, quarterback being that good and continuing to develop talent and add to that talent as some of the really important players get a little too expensive and a little too old for the roster, and it's going to happen. They still have Nick Bosa, who's still young. They still have a lot of other really good players, but it's not a closing window, but I think there's some things they really have to do to not allow it to fall apart. Like, you remember the late career Brady New England Patriots? Like, they just didn't build the roster well.
Yeah.
Like, GM Bill Belichick made head coach Bill Belichick's life so difficult because they just didn't do a good job of replenishing talent around Tom Brady. And it really started to fall apart. And then once Brady left, it was like, oh my God, this roster is one of the worst in the NFL. You can't let it fall apart like that. And I don't think that is what's going to happen for the 49ers. And the one thing they have going for them is a really good quarterback and a really good coach. And that bodes well for a window staying open, even if it's not quite as wide open as the talented roster we see in 2024.
I can see that. Now, as far as this list goes, Are there any surprises? I can't see the full list. Everything I pull up is showing like the top offensive players. That's where I see Kittle and Trent Williams. I see the top defensive players. You got guys like DeMarcus Lawrence, Cam Hayward, Chris Jones, Khalil Mack. That's on the defensive line. But I don't see. Oh, here's a full list here.
I don't think there was a ton of surprises necessarily on the list. There's a lot of quarterbacks. There's only one. There were 0 corners and 1 running back on the whole list. And so that was probably the biggest takeaway is like certain positions age better than others. Offensive linemen age better, tight ends age better, quarterbacks age better than, corners and we're seeing it around the league, Croc. There's a lot of like guys who were star corners at one point and they're kind of journeymen and mercenaries and they're 1-year deals. You see that with running backs a lot as well. So I think that was one of the bigger takeaways is what positions can play a long time. And, the 49ers that were on that list, tight end and offensive line, that's, those are positions that can play a lot longer than some others, including quarterback, which means, we might be talking about Brock Purdy for a very long time. If he is that guy for the 49ers, because he's on the under 25 list right now, he could be on the over 30 list for years and years and years, like, approaching 40 years old. So it's so important to have a really young, good quarterback in the NFL.
The interesting thing about that list, I think PFF is going more off of like their grades. Is that how they're doing it? More the grades as opposed to
they always lean into their grades for sure. And it's up to the writer of the article. And John talked about his process. He can do whatever he wants, right? And so that was what he said about George Kittle. It's like, it's my list. I can do whatever I want with it. But he is an analyst at PFF, and he's involved in all the data processes that happen there. So he's going to lean into what the data tells him about these players too.
Yeah, just seeing like Cooper Kupp so low, Aaron Rodgers so low, Stephon Diggs so low. It's like, how do you go from Stephon Diggs at 25 to Brandon Graham at 26? Like, I feel like Diggs is way up here. Graham is like, oh, he's really about to retire.
And expecting them. It's a 1-year list, first of all, too. So he's projecting 2024. He said one of his guys that just missed was actually another running back in Raheem Mostert. Raheem Mostert, 33 years old, right? But he's like, but Raheem Mostert, his game is so built on speed that could fall apart so fast. And it's such a committee in Miami. Am I projecting that he's going to be a more valuable player and a better player than, Stephon Diggs or whoever else is on the 30 over 30 list? So that's part of it too. So there is some projection by the author on how he thinks these players, based on how they have played recently, how they will continue to play into 2024.
So in 2024, you think Keenan Allen for the Chicago Bears is going to have a better season than Diggs for the Houston Texans?
That's a tough one. I probably would not project that. No, but can you count on exactly what, like, because Diggs didn't have a great year last year. Can you count on what Keenan Allen is, what he's going to give you more than maybe a more volatile player in Stephon Diggs?
Always worry about the rookie quarterback situation. You just never know what that is going to look like. So I just would lean into Diggs. Again, maybe I would have said the same thing last year if you told me, Diggs was on the Houston Texans heading into last year and they have a rookie quarterback. I'd be like, then obviously we see Stroud. He ended up being terrific. So Caleb could be terrific, but it's just hard to project that with rookie quarterbacks.
Let us know what you think. Did the 49ers have any snubs on the 30 over 30 or the 25 under 25 lists? At BD Peacock, at Crocky209. There was a question in the chat. Is there going to be an OT with BP after this? There's actually going to be an OT with BP later on this evening, this being Tuesday evening. My guy, Jason Aponte, I'm jumping on his pod. He's on my pod. You can find it on his channel. You can find it on the Overtime with Brian Peacock channel as well. Haven't done a lot post-draft, but I'm going to have some fun getting on that one. And, of course, you can find me and Croc every single day right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you're subscribed up to the Peacock and Williamson Show, which I'm doing daily on this network. Make sure you're subscribed up to Eric Crocker's YouTube channel as well. There's a lot of channels to be subscribed to get the best 49ers and NFL content. And of course, we'll be back tomorrow right here. Locked On 49ers. OTA time, baby.